have you here today. How are you doing this afternoon? Oh, come on, guys. Are you okay this afternoon? Are we learning things? Are we learning? Are we enjoying? Fantastic. That's what we like to hear. We are going to be talking about the importance of shifting to a circular economy paradigm and future outlook. And I'd like to introduce you to our wonderful panelists. Please welcome up Stanley Johnson. He is the former Conservative Party politician and member of the European Parliament. He's currently International Ambassador for the Conservative Environment Network and chairman of the Advisory Council for Global Education and a fantastic author of numerous books and about the environment. And I could go on and on about your biography. Where would you like to sit? You sit wherever you like, Stanley. It's fine. Up next, she's been up and down this stage like a hot potato. Please welcome back the wonderful Maya Al-Hawary, first Emirati PhD scholar to research emotional intelligence and its effect. And she's on leadership in the media. Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank
and
you.
Also, please welcome Yana Leonova, PhD. She is the Deputy General Manager of the Private Office of Sheikh Sakhir bin Mohammed Al Qasimi and head of the Future Innovation Summit. Hi, Yana, how are you?
Good.
Wonderful to have you all here this afternoon.
It's an all-woman panel.
Aw, you're very privileged to be here with us, Stanley. We'll say that, shall we? It's an interesting thing, the circular economy. Can I start by giving you a brilliant example of a circular economy? There's a gentleman called David Katz, and he is the CEO of the Plastic Bank. And what the Plastic Bank does in developing countries, poor countries, they go and they collect up all the plastic. They basically employ impoverished people to collect the plastic. What cannot be recycled is disposed of properly. What can be recycled is baled up and shipped off to other countries who can recycle it and reuse it in fantastic things. Now, here's the thing. The money that comes from the recycled plastic is put into bank accounts for the people that collected it so that they can use it for housing, for utilities, for education, for clothing. So he closed the circle doing this. And he made a brilliant analogy. He said, when it comes to things like plastics, it's already in the ecosystem. It's like trying to mop the floor before we've turned off the tap. It's a really, really difficult thing. So there are challenges. There's huge challenges. So that's my first question. The main challenges that we see for circular economies, the barriers are cultural, lack of awareness, lack of technologies, lack of economic viability, and inadequate policies to implement circular economies. So where do we start changing that, Stanley?
Well, let's just talk about plastics for a moment. There's just been a big decision that the United Nations Environment Assembly, I think it was in March or April this year, to try to negotiate a world treaty on plastics. Now, this is quite an important moment. The truth is, of course, we can't afford to wait for an international treaty to take place. That's going to take years. There's some very practical things which are being done at the moment, and you mentioned an example. I'll give you another. I'm an advisor to an organization called Upcycle Plastics. And what do? We're working with Mediterranean fishermen, particularly off the Spanish coast, to pick up a lot of the plastic nets and the plastic debris which is created by the fishing industry. And there's a huge amount of that. And there are people in Spain who are sending it over, this plastic waste, to England. We're making it into pellets, and we are then, as it were, upcycling it. And would you believe what we've done is we're taking all the medical waste from quite a number of hospitals, and we're converting that medical waste and sending it back as scrubs, medical scrubs and other garments. So this is an example of upcycling. And why is that important in a world sense? It's important because the more you can recycle plastics or upcycle plastics, it means the fewer plastics are actually produced in the first place. And if you look, I won't talk for very long, but if you look at the whole challenge which is before us, okay, just take climate change. You've got to reduce the emissions, and we know we've got the targets of Paris and so on. We know that about 55% of that has to be done through energy, but the remaining 45% has to be done at the consumer level. It's agriculture, it's plastics, it's cement, it's steel, it's aluminiums. And to answer your question, to change attitudes, you need two things. I would say you absolutely need governmental intervention. I go back to my time in the European Commission. I go back to a very key moment, which is December the 15th, 2015, when the EU adopted a big document called Towards a Circular Economy. And that is now being implemented in about 15 or 16 different sectors. I would say, with the greatest respect, that the governments of the League of Arab States, and of course we are one of them here, do need to, as it were, collaborate at a regional level, probably also through the League of Arab States, to make sure there's a kind of common basis for the way they're approaching, because after all, plastics do float from one country to another. They're traded from one country to another, so you can't avoid getting a common approach here. But equally, at consumer level, once you've got a framework in there, there has to be consumer-led initiatives as well. So it's a double prong on plastics and indeed all the other things. Now, the food sector is something which others here will want to talk about, but of course it's crucial.
And Maya, let's come to you, moving on from what Stanley was saying, because knowledge and leadership is your area. So how do we go about changing these mindsets from the top to the bottom? Because, you know, the younger generations are super important. We have to teach them to change the mindsets and attitudes, but it's got to come from the top. So where do we start? What's your opinion on that?
When we talk about a circular economy, in the knowledge economy, the first thing that we have to define is what economy means. Economy means it's a system of production and consumption, and the value of that are intangible assets. But the production and consumption and the intangible assets are the intellectual capital, which comes from learning, workers' knowledge, and research. Developed countries are defined by the intellectual property and the way they support researchers as myself. I live in a country where research is in high demand, and we are supported. I'm currently actually looking at surveys and collecting quantitative data to analyze. It is that kind of a support that we are looking for. When we talk about circular economy, you look at social media, for example, the production, the amount of, let's say, waterfall or rivers of knowledge that is poured into these platforms, and at the same time, we're expected to, everybody to take that in. There's a lot of knowledge that is being shared, some useful, some no need, and some is just for pure entertainment. Now, how do you build a nation from all of this? Some information could be actually harmful for generations to come. We talk about the circular economy, and some are very useful. It really depends on raising awareness on how to choose wisely, on what needs to be learned. And skill set is very important. I believe more than education is important, but now you have all these channels that give you education, so it's really up to you to choose. So circular economy in a knowledge economy is very challenging, actually, because it really depends on the individual themselves.
Indeed. And Yana, what do you see as the main challenges that we see at the moment?
Since years I have been involved in agriculture, and my PhD is actually in economy of agriculture. And if you look at statistics, you will be really shocked to see that 50% of food production, 50%, it's millions of tons of food waste is happening between so-called the corp and fork. 50%. So this is due to numerous factors. It's a huge supply chains that going from the crop to transportation, to storaging, to distribution, and so on and so on. And each element of the supply chain is responsible for the food waste. And millions of people are involved in agriculture. If you look at the United Nations statistics again, you will see that agriculture actually is considered as the major sector in terms of like human involvement. Nearly 50% of us humans are actually more or less involved in agriculture. And we still, manage to get all this food waste. And I'm glad to see that for the last at least 5 years, technologies are really stepping in, big time, education, technologies, what was considered before a very traditional area with a lot of illiterate, farmers, a lot of illiterate peasants, inability to manage, inability to plan. Now technologies are stepping in. We can use blockchain for transparency, for taking care of the proper supply chain. We can use artificial intelligence. We can use the same drones that are now flying around crops, and they can see what's going on, where is humidity, where is extra, water, and this and that, so they can give some online adequate analysis of crops, and so we can react properly, to tackle the issue straight away. So I'm very positive about changes in this regard. But of course, education, it comes first. And penetration of technologies that are coming to agriculture and food tech, food printing, agro-tech. In my opinion, these are very important tech if you speak about circular economy. So it's just unavoidable. We need to tackle these issues, and we need to find solutions on all elements of supply chain.
Apparently we've just got another addition to our panel. We've got Alissar Nasr Soubra, who's going to be joining us on our panel. Is Ali here? Would you like to grab a microphone? Apparently Mr. Adnan has invited you to join our panel.
I want to pick up on the agriculture.
Go on, Stanley, carry on with you. Ali, would you just like to introduce yourself?
My name is Alissar Nasr Soubra. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for Al Mawakib Schools in Dubai.
Fantastic. I'll just let Stanley finish his points, and then...
Well, I wanted to just pick up on the agriculture point. I mean, I'm not as clever as Yana. I have a diploma in agriculture and economics, not a PhD, but I think she's absolutely right to say this is a really important sector. If you look at the world's water supply, 80% of the world's water supply is used in agriculture. Do you see? So when you can make economies in the agricultural sector, I don't mean economic economies, I mean economies of waste, reducing waste there. And I think this does link absolutely also with the packaging question, which is, fundamental in terms of the things we're talking about. So, really important sector. I said there are 5 sectors you have to deal with. Energy we've been talking about a lot, but you've got plastics, you've got chemicals, you've got aluminium, you've got steel, and you've got cement. All those and the products which flow from those sectors have to be looked at very carefully.
And so, Alissar, as an educator and dealing with youngsters, how do we change that mindset?
Well, I think for almost every single one of your panels or keynote speeches till now, I would say the most important and maybe sometimes forgotten factor is what do you do when they are still children. So for us in schools, I believe educating about what these esteemed colleagues are talking about starts in schools. You cannot wait till they are adults before you start drumming down the importance of sustainability and this shocking statistic of the 50%. So, but it's not limited to what the schools can do. It's got to be at a government level, at a ministry level.
Right.
What regulations are you putting in place so that the schools have the flexibility to educate like that? Because sometimes the over-regulation on and of education limits how much we can do, and puts us in a corner of only doing it when there's extra time to do it. So on a personal level for us, for next year, I'm actually building tower farms in our schools and introducing hydroponic agriculture among the students, because we live in an area that requires other approaches towards agriculture than counting on soil. So I have communicated with students in Holland who are working on their own projects in hydroponics, and we're going to start planting lettuce and other vegetables in school and hopefully have our own little ripe market and start telling the kids we can all have sustainable agricultural approaches in our homes, not only in our schools. So starting early and counting on all of these guests here to think of ways to incorporate learning of students at children level into any ideas they incorporate. Any ideas need you to start there when they're young. You cannot influence them as much when they're older. Yeah. You can do it when they're still in school.
You've got to treat when they're at the sponge
That's
stage.
Right. Yep, you have to. I mean, if you want them, talking about the metaverse is the same. I'm happy, excited about the metaverse, but at the same time, has anyone started looking into the learning of students in the metaverse? Don't give me just get into the metaverse. Tell me how you're approaching learning for children.
I think that's a whole other discussion.
Yep.
I want to ask you all. Obviously, we're in an age when technology is taking over. We are in a technological age. Everyone has, most people have more than one smartphone these days, and it was only in recent years, when your laptop dies, you upgrade your phone. What the heck do you do with your old? There's billions pumped into these industries producing this tech. What do you do when you have to get rid of it? And most people don't actually know. So how big is the technology recycling industry? And is that a bigger viable industry, Stanley?
I come back to the point I made about regulation. It is absolutely incumbent on governments to bring in necessary rules, laws, regulations as regards the disposal and the recycling of electronic waste. It may seem ironic since the EU has just left UK, or vice versa. The UK has just left the EU. But truthfully, they are trying to do this on a pan-European level, and it's the kind of thing which has to happen on a League of States level. Legal systems regarding the disposal of electronic waste. Absolutely vital. You can't expect individual consumers, to know what to do. There has to be a system for doing it.
Maya, do we need more on that front?
I think when you ask that question, I go back to Corona and how we were all forced to get on the wagon. It was almost like a slap in the face. If you're not in tech, you gotta be in tech. So we talk about schools and universities. We were as students and as leaders, we had to make sure that platforms were ready for education delivery, solutions for assessments, being able to communicate with parents. So the virtue, I call it today, and the skill of adaptation, to adapt to the changes that are happening and the fast changes that are happening in technology is really something that is very challenging for us as individuals. However, can you imagine looking at governments and the type of security systems that they have to put in quickly as we move forward? So I really think that, I believe that Corona has shooken up our internal mental system on how we think of technology, and I believe I became more brave in trying, and I have no problems learning something new, yet it's not as easy as it is. We were talking today, you and I, Stanley, you were saying that change is the toughest constant to beat, because as human beings, we like to be comfortable. So can you imagine with the amount of technology that we have and that we have to ride on the wagon, it's not an easy thing.
And kind of coming on, Yana, I'm going to ask this question of you, onto the point about recycling and governmental. There are solutions out there, but unfortunately a lot of these solutions require a lot of investment. Do you think there's a reluctance from some companies or organizations to adopt these solutions because of the initial outlay that it would cost them?
At our perspective, one way we do it so that we don't always have to count on organizations to do it for us is we reuse and we send a lot of our unused technology, hardware if you want, to less developed countries that may need it. We contribute it to prisons in the UAE. There are a lot of schools that don't have the power that we do, so sharing is another term that should be added maybe to recycling and reducing and reusing. So, but yeah, reluctance, of course, it's always there. It's all about the money, unfortunately.
And Yana?
But I believe that I see now positive changes and shifting on a personal level toward sharing and reusing and redesigning. I remember at a certain point of time, we all were just like chasing, the new iPhone, the new this, the new this. It doesn't matter if our previous device is already, out of use really, or we just wanted to have a new brand and like superior brand. But I think now people are, in my opinion, what I see among, my friends and colleagues, this mindset is changing. People became more conscious, just about economy on their personal level, maybe less chasing, this limited editions or the last edition of the same so-called iPhone. In 2021, just last year, France, actually, the first one, they introduced the necessary index for their French manufacturing companies, and it's called the index of repairability. So now each and every manufacturer should, like according to some certain scoring, give this index, how easy it is to repair the product, so that gives possibility for consumers, to decide like what they can choose. So I think it's a great initiative. And it's really like in the trend with the circular economy that we need to rethink, we need to redesign. It's not about just throwing, unused or, for example, old or damaged item, but we can easily reshape it, redesign it. We can make a combination of new, details combined with the second hand and just give, a new life to the device in terms of waste.
I think time's up.
I know we are pretty much out of time, so I'm just going to do really, really quickly. Look, there are solutions out there. There are major solutions. This is a big industry. It's a huge industry, and I don't understand why more people aren't tapping into it. So really, really quickly, I just want to go down the line. And if you would like to see people to change...
Shouldn't we stick to the rules here? It says time's up.
Stanley, if you could ask people to change one thing, what would it be?
Stick to the rules.
Maya, go. Come again. One thing that you would like people to change quickly.
The swift of knowledge sharing, the ability to share knowledge quickly.
Yana.
Personal level responsibility.
Okay. Alissar.
Give kids a voice.
Love it. Excellent. Thank you so much to my panelists. Stanley's going to make me stick to the rules. Good man.
Mr. Stanley, I would love to present my book. I know you will take a lot of memories from this summit, but this, I would be honored to be a part of your book.
Wow, look at that.
That's beautiful.
You lead your life.
Thank
you
you so
so
much.
much. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. What a joy. Thank you, everybody. Look.